15 years after the start of the Arab Spring, Egyptians are governed by a regime more repressive than ever. And someone who knows that more than most is Laila Soueif, a human rights activist and professor of mathematics at Cairo University. Soueif is currently on day 82 of a hunger strike, calling for the release of her son, Alaa el-Fattah, who has been in detention on trumped-up charges of spreading false news since 2019. el-Fattah, a 43-year-old UK national, is a prominent blogger and writer and was a leading figure in the 2011 Arab Spring. He's been in and out of detention multiple times and in this instance has already served a 5-year jail sentence. However, earlier this year, el-Fattah's family were told he wouldn't be released until January 2027, as the authorities refused to count the time he previously spent in pre-trial detention as part of his prison sentence. A vigil was held for el-Fattah last night in Downing Street, and today I had the privilege of speaking to Laila Soueif in the Novara Media studio. I began by asking Laila why she has chosen the hunger strike as a form of protest.
Because everything else has failed, actually. I mean, we've done, a lot of petitioning and demonstrating, and in Egypt it's very difficult anyway, because people who stand by you get arrested and stuff like that. And here in Britain, my daughters have already done sit-ins outside the Foreign Office. We've done pretty much everything. And we finally, when Alaa actually was not released on the date on which she was supposed to be released, I realized that this could really just go on forever. And I also realized that both the Egyptian and the British government will not really move on this unless they have a crisis in their hands. I decided to create a crisis. I thought my hunger strike would actually create a crisis, which it seems to have done. And this is the first time I've had the full attention of the British government. And, you can never be sure in Egypt, but I think I've got the attention of the Egyptian government as well. So maybe this time we'll get something done.
And before we move on to the issue you're protesting and how our government are responding, you're on day 82 now of a hunger strike, right? That's a very extreme thing to put your body through. How are you holding up?
Miraculously, so far, I haven't had any dire consequence. I'm tired, and I get tired very easily, but I haven't had any dire consequences from my hunger strike. I assume that I'm still in the phase where the body just burns extra fat. I was quite plump. I've lost like 20 kilos, and maybe I've still got 10 kilos to go or something before something terrible happens. But I really didn't expect to come this far. I told David Lammy when I met him almost a month ago that we've been given a lucky break. I didn't expect my body to hold out this far, so let's not waste it. I'm saying that is more urgent now because we really are probably. There's no way of knowing this. I mean, even the doctors say there's no way of knowing this. You can't know when you're going to collapse. But we're getting closer anyway, so I hope this thing finishes before we get there.
And can you talk to us about your son, Alaa? Are you aware of his treatment during his imprisonment or how he's doing now?
We get a letter once a week and we get a visit once a month. The visit is for 20 minutes. That's all the visits in Egyptian prisons now are for 20 minutes once a month. And our visit has the extra restriction of being behind glass barrier, talking through a phone, so that, everything you say gets recorded, etc. But at least we are assured of his health. His mood has been very down since he was not released on his, he keyed up himself to be released on that date. So now his mood is very down. He's very angry. He's very angry at both governments, and he's very worried about me.
So the fact your son was in jail in the first place, it has been condemned by the likes of Amnesty. It's sort of trumped up charges. But even according to Egyptian law, he should have been released now, right? Because he's spent 2 years in detention before he was sentenced. So what's your understanding of why he's still in prison?
My understanding is that the regime really doesn't want to release anybody if they can help it. I mean, I have a friend who's another university professor. He's over 70. He was Muslim Brotherhood, so they're even worse. They treat them even worse than they've treated Alaa. He's been found innocent by the Court of Cassation since 2018. He's still in jail. So that's just one case. We've got hundreds of cases like that.
And do you think that's because the regime is scared of anyone they see as potential opposition? Obviously, they'd prefer them to be behind bars so they're not causing trouble or demonstrating.
They're scared. They're vengeful. They're lots of things, but mainly, yes, I think mainly because they're scared, and also because they're sending a scare message to people. If you do anything, that's how you'll end up.
You're in Britain now. You've been lobbying the British government. Can you talk about what you're hearing from them? What do you want to hear from them?
Firstly, I expect any government, particularly a government that pretends to respect the rule of law, to care for the rights and the safety of its citizens. Alaa is binational, and so am I. So, and the British and the Egyptian governments are not enemy governments. They're, allies. So for me, they're both responsible for Alaa's rights and for Alaa's safety. And they should both, deliver our rights as citizens. But this is particularly so in the case of the British government, because it is a government that claims to uphold the rule of law, that claims to abide by the statutes of human rights. So it should be held responsible. What I'm expecting from the British government is to use its good relations with the Egyptian government, its alliance with the Egyptian government, to set Alaa free. And right now, after a lot of talk with the Foreign Office, with different MPs and so on, what I really want is that, because, this is not a reflection on the Foreign Office here. I know how the regime in Egypt works, and I know that it works top down. I know that nothing will move if it's not given the green light by President Sisi personally. So right now, what I'm hoping for is that the Prime Minister will intervene personally to talk to Mr. Sisi and persuade him to give the green light on this case. I think he's capable of doing that. I think he is probably the only one placed to do so.
Do you think persuasion is something which is within the British government's gift when it comes to Sisi, or do you think that there might be, economic pressure as something that might need to be put on the Egyptian government?
That's something for the government to judge, actually. But from what I understand, the things the Egyptian government seems to want, like an economic conference with Britain and more investment and so on, seem to be things that the British want to do them. So I don't see, I don't see that. But that's something for the government to judge. I just see it as half persuasion, half leverage, something in between.
David Lammy is obviously the current British Foreign Secretary. I know when he was Shadow Foreign Secretary, so when he was in opposition, he was quite supportive of you in the campaign to get your son released. Do you think he's carried that enthusiasm into government, or is there an element of realpolitik, whereby when someone enters government, they suddenly have a slight change in emphasis and priorities?
There is an element of realpolitik, and I suppose that's to be expected. But also, realpolitik does not mean you back down. What it means is you put, for me, what it means anyway, is that, you keep your aims, but you work on them, maybe in a different manner, but you still work on them and you still push for them. Mr. Lamy has been pushing. It's just that, again, as I said, the most Mr. Lamy, I assume the most Mr. Lamy can do is to push the Foreign Office in Egypt. The Foreign Office in Egypt might be the place to push once they've been given the green light by the presidency. However hard you push them, if they haven't been given the green light by the presidency, all they'll do is stonewall you.
So your son was a leading figure in the 2011 revolution, as you and many of your family members were. Egypt is now ruled by a regime many people see as even more repressive than the guy who was in charge back then, so Mubarak, of course. How do you look back on the Arab Spring in Egypt and its legacy?
The Arab Spring itself was a time of heady hope. Now is a time of counter-revolutionary triumph. So, from that prospect, things look very bad. On the other hand, when I look back on the years before the Arab, because I'm so much older, when I look back on the years before the Arab Spring, I would still rather be where we are than where we were. I keep telling people who were too young to see what it was like then, that for me at least, it feels much better to be part of a popular movement, even a defeated popular movement, than to be part of small groups who only get to talk to each other, which is what we were before the Arab Spring.
The Arab Spring, has been positioned as something that's in the past, something that's over, something that failed, potentially. The surprise fall of President Assad, though, now, of course, former President Assad in Syria, has led some people to say maybe the Arab Spring is still going on. Maybe these Arab dictators aren't as safe as they might have very recently seen. How are you personally viewing recent events in Syria?
Well, for one thing, I'm elated that al-Assad is out. Of course, I see, the problems Syria is facing. Anyone can see them. But nothing that we have seen, maybe since the Middle Ages, equals the sort of repression Syria was under. So, I know that we have many times said it can't get worse, and it's gotten worse. But I really don't see how Syria can get worse. I mean, nothing. And that's one side of it. The other side of it is when we actually saw, the inside of Assad's jails. There's a message there because I and so many prisoners' families in Egypt know that we have something exactly like that, although on a much smaller scale in Egypt. So I'm hoping that people, will. I mean, a lot of people do believe us, but it's different when you actually see the stuff. When you actually see those people coming out of, years and years of detention. So I'm hoping that it will raise everyone's consciousness in the whole area. And to get back to your words, no, the Arab Spring is not over. It's going through a very down period at the moment, but you only have to look. Every time it sort of gets stamped on, it comes up somewhere else. It came up in Sudan and everyone was so surprised. Now Sudan has been, pushed into a civil war, but it does keep coming up somewhere else. So no, it's not over. In a way, it can't be over because, conditions people are living under in the whole of the Arab world are becoming more and more intolerable. And people in power like Sisi or wherever, they are not doing, okay, you can be a dictator and stabilize a country if you're at least making people's lives better in some other form. But you can't be a dictator and just repress people while economic conditions are in free downfall and stabilize anything.
That was Laila Soueif speaking to me earlier today in the Novara Media studio. It was really impressive to have someone who's on day 82 of their hunger strike come to speak to us here.